Welcome to another episode of Culture8 Podcast, brought to you by Izini, your trusted partner in building thriving workplace cultures. Here we explore the intricate and dynamic world of organizational culture, uncovering insights and strategies to help leaders and teams foster an environment where people and businesses can grow together. Today we are talking with Cerys Cook, Chief People Officer and Transformation Officer at Swift Medical. Welcome to the podcast, Cerys. It's an honor to host you today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Same. Thank you. Thank you. Please tell us what's exciting happening in your world today.
Yeah, so at Swift Medical, we are in the process of releasing a new medical device. So there's a lot of exciting development happening. On the side of sort of the culture piece, we've had actually a massive transformation over the last year and have really leaned into rebuilding our culture from scratch, and which is, I think what a lot of our conversation will lean towards is sort of the culture arena. So.
Awesome. Fantastic. That's exciting stuff. I'm sure there would have been a lot of work. I know a little bit about organizational culture, and it can take a long time and it can be very complex.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, before we take a deep dive into this topic of organizational culture, I would love for my audience to get to know you a little better. What was your very first job?
So my very first job was actually as an assistant at Sweeney Todd's Hair Design. And if you don't know the story of Sweeney Todd, it's actually quite dark. It's a fictional story, but it was a barber who somehow was wronged and ended up in court, and the judge took his family away from him and descends into this psychosis and actually ends up murdering his clients and baking them into pies that are sold in a meat pie shop in London, and then ultimately ends up killing by accident sort of everybody that he loved. So really charming story. But and ironically, this hair salon was right next to a funeral home. But I washed hair, I welcomed the people, swept the floors, washed towels, and I actually learned a lot in that first job. Really, one of the biggest lessons was that the smallest roles can actually teach big lessons, and that every job, no matter what the job is important, because without the person that preps the client and sets the tone and welcomes people, it's really a lot harder for the stylist to do their job. So it's that idea of every role plays an important part in an organization. And also something that really stuck with me throughout my entire career is how the owner treated me, which was a valued part of the team. So even though, I had the smallest job and it was part-time, he actually really cared about me and the experience that I had at work. And so that's really my first glimpse into that power of employee experience.
Yes.
And, as well as great branding, being super clear on your target market, because, who wants to get their hair cut by somebody that might chop their head off and grind them into a meat pie? Turns out a lot of people. But, it really sparked this lifelong fascination with how people feel at work.
I love it. Just on that particular aspect of things, I would say that I really started Izini, my organization, to help organizations create better people-centric cultures, is based on just one of these main basic concepts. How do you make people feel valued in your organization? And that has such amazing effects, or rather, everything else just becomes side effects. The steady stream of satisfied customer, the 10x growth, it just becomes side effect if you make your people feel valued. So fantastic. Awesome. All right. Let's talk about organizational culture. And I know I had other aspects of when you were speaking of it, but I've missed out on those. But In your experience, what are the most powerful but often overlooked levers HRs can use to influence organization culture?
Such a good question. And I think there's quite a few levers actually that are wildly powerful, but sometimes not overused, underused. So the first thing that comes to mind is really language. So the way we talk about work and success and failure and leadership,
Yes.
because words set the tone for how the culture is lived and really like how the culture becomes visible.
Mm.
And if we call a team high performing,
Mm.
but then we reward things like overwork and heroics instead of collaboration and consistency,
Right.
it really tells people what we actually value.
Exactly.
And so when we're really intentional about language and how we describe the expectations and the behaviors of that are expected, and even in job titles, then we start to really shape that culture through every single interaction. The second thing, and this one I think is absolutely foundational, and maybe I would actually put this first, is the strength of your relationship with the CEO.
Interesting.
His culture is shaped by what the CEO actually models. And as I say, the lowest common denominator of the behavior that is accepted in your culture becomes your culture. But if HR doesn't have a seat at the table or the trust to challenge or influence the CEO, it's very hard to create that lasting alignment.
Yeah.
You can build great programs, but if they're not backed by leadership behavior, then every single one of them will fall flat.
Yeah.
So that relationship is key. Another one is system design. And I look at, and you hear about this a lot, as people programs, I look at them as products.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a constant evolution, and you get some feedback from your customers, and then you come back and you evolve, and it's a constant ebb and flow of changing.
Yes.
But I mean, as we know, we talk about this all the time on LinkedIn platforms, that culture isn't what's written on the walls or the ping pong table like we used to think it was. It's really how people get hired, how decisions get made, how performance is evaluated, how recognition happens, all of those things.
Yeah.
And it's essentially the idea of how we do things around here.
Yeah.
And so every time we're tweaking that performance review system, or we're clarifying ownership in a RACI, or shifting how promotions are handled, any of those things, you're shaping culture in a very real way.
Yeah.
So it's essential, because the problem often is that HR is doing that in isolation rather than bringing it out to the organization and creating it as a system that is aligned to the business goals.
Very crucial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
One more. But just one, I'll be quick. So I would say a manager enablement or leader enablement,
Yes.
because it's that you have all of these great conversations at the executive leadership table, and we're all bought in, and it's great. And then it kind of dies there. So it's really that next layer of leadership that are your frontline interpreters of culture. And they're the ones who make decisions about flexibility for their people, or they hold or they don't hold the people accountable to the cultural norms, or they are modeling the communication norms or not. Those are the people who are really having the impact on people and how culture is lived. So if we're not deeply investing in their clarity and their capability and their confidence, then culture will always get lost in that translation.
Fantastic stuff. A lot of stuff. I mean, if I may just pick up a few things. You talked about language, which is phenomenal, because when I wanted to start thinking about Izini and what I wanted to do, I knew for sure I needed to ensure that when my clients work with me, one of the best things that I can enable them or consult or advise them on is the fact that you need to have a common language all throughout, from the leadership all the way to the leaf node. This is the way I look at it, based on Erin Meyer's description of what an organization should look like. So it is fantastic to hear this from you. So yes, common language is so important. Strength of the relationship with the CEO. I love the outlook from the HR perspective. I'm not a human resource person, but I love people. And even though I don't come from that background, of course, with my love for people, my understanding of organizations, how they work, I've seen in different various cultures and companies. I just feel that it's so. The CEO is the one who models, or rather brings in the culture. It's their values and beliefs that will translate ultimately into the basic assumptions, the culture DNA of the organization as it solves its challenges. So that is such an important part, that if human resources does create a plan or a model or a, like you mentioned, a product, or the CEO must use that. In fact, or rather, they have to show the behaviors, because that's what culture is. Culture is the behavioral norm. So when there is it's led by the example of the CEO or the leadership, it just helps to translate it better to the rest of the team. And I wouldn't even say go down the floor, because I look at the organizations on a opposite angle, rather than, the leaders at the very bottom, the root level, the trunks and the branches are the managers, and the leaf node are the value creators, the people who actually have maximum information along for the entire organization. So yes, backed by the leadership behavior, that's an awesome point. System design, it is an iterative work. I won't go much into that, but definitely a very relevant point. And funny enough, when you talk about manager enablement, one of the first articles I wrote about was advice to managers. It was about the fact that it is your responsibility to grow your people. There's so many things that you can do, and it's not your responsibility to do the work. Actually, it's to ensure that your people have everything that they need to be able to do this. You need to move away from that mindset that you are now the value creator. No, my friend, you are not the value creator. You're creating that environment such that the real value creators can shine and really thrive. So fantastic advice over there. Like I mentioned, I wrote an article on this, and then just talking about the organization, like I mentioned, it's a tree. At the bottom is the CEO, the leadership. You have the managers in the branch level, providing clarity to the context and the boundaries set by the leadership. So fantastic stuff. I love it. So much conversation in just one question.
Yeah, I love the analogy of the tree.
It's by Erin Myers, not my own. I don't have any thoughts of my own per se, but I love and capture from so many different leaders and thought leaders that I feel that I'm able to bring that out to my clients. It's like I'm using the human DNA to create better organizations.
Love that.
Awesome. What role does human resource plays in shaping the unspoken norms, those invisible rules that really govern behavior in organizations?
Yes. I think this is actually one of the most important and possibly misunderstood roles that HR can play. Because as you said, like every organization has those unspoken norms, and it's almost like these invisible rules that shape how things really get done.
Yeah.
So just like things like, is it safe to dissent? So, do decisions happen in meetings, or are they happening in the side conversations afterwards? Do I don't know, like people get rewarded for collaboration or for those individual heroics? So, and none of those norms are written down, but they are so deeply felt, and that is how the individual contributors are experiencing the organization, is through these unspoken norms.
Yeah.
So they often override whatever you've put in your beautiful values statements and all of these things that you've written on the walls or handbooks or wherever you have all these things written. And people are just like, really? Because this is actually what happens.
Yeah.
So, like, HR is really uniquely positioned to see the patterns because we're sitting at the intersection of all of the functions and we hear on a daily basis where all of the friction points are.
Hmm.
So we really watch how the values are reinforced or they're contradicted in those everyday decisions that people are making. And so, there are many HR people that just don't know what to do with that.
Hmm.
It's like, I'm hearing all of this feedback and I know that it's a problem, but the real work comes in naming those norms and being courageous and clear about it and
Hmm.
bringing the invisible into the light and then
Hmm.
rewiring them through the systems that we built. So, everything that we've already talked about, like how we promote, how we recognize, how we communicate, all of those things. And also to get the CEO and the executive team to really see
Hmm.
these are the invisible things that are happening in the organization, to get their buy-in to how we're going to change it so that they then hold people accountable to the new systems.
Yep.
And of course, that's a much easier conversation if you sit at that same table.
Yep.
But still, it's still possible to do, but that's why it's so critical for, one of the, 100 reasons I can tell you about why it's important for the people function to sit at the executive table, but it's a whole other conversation.
Yep.
But it's not enough to talk about culture aspirationally.
Right.
Because if we really, really want to shape it meaningfully, we have to understand what's already there in the shadows as well and be willing to do that really uncomfortable work, because it is uncomfortable and it's hard to
Yes.
shift it, because that's really where the real cultural transformation starts.
Absolutely. So many points over there as well. If you don't mind, I would share. I don't know if we've conversed before, just recently on organizational culture, and my influence on organizational culture has been by a leader called Edgar H. Sheehan. You probably have heard of him. He's a notable authority on organizational culture, and the way he describes organizational culture is on three different levels. I wouldn't go into the definition, like I probably try to go into it. It's a shared learning of the organization as it solves its challenges and then creates these behavioral norms. But in terms of the levels of organizational culture, it's like thinking of it as an iceberg. At the very top is the artifacts, everything that you hear, feel, and see about the organization, the way you dress, the way you talk to each other, the way you talk to your customers. At the bottom is that written rules that you were talking about, and is the espoused values and beliefs. These are our goals, these are philosophies, the ideology. This is what we want to be as an organization. At the very bottom is that unspoken rules. These are the basic assumptions. That's the culture DNA of the organization. It's fallen out of awareness, but it was at one point of time a contention. It's someone else's values and beliefs, but over success and time, it became our basic assumption. Like you mentioned, this is how we do things here, right? As Ezini, this is one of our things that we do. And again, it's something that we've understood from Edgar Sheehan's framework of understanding organizational culture, is to get to understand what is the basic assumptions of this organization. Because and this is now words of Peter Senge, the only way we're going to grow and change or bring about change is to change the basic assumptions, the basic mental models, the shared mental models of the organization. So fantastic stuff. Everything that you just said, I said it in different words. That's about it. So I love that this question as well, and your responses. Thank you for sharing that. Any thoughts that you want to add on? I'm sure like there's always a conversation, back and forth.
Onto sort of not really. I think I think we've said so much about it in different ways and kind of built on what each other have said. So yeah. That, of course, there's so much more to say about it.
Always. It's so deep and complex that you can never. I just yesterday I had and recorded another conversation with another leader. His perspectives, again, he's not from a human resource world, but he's got a lot of experience in sales and marketing. And then we were talking about it. And every time that we took up a question and we conversed, we had so much back and forth, and we ended up that question with the fact that we can keep on talking about just this kind of conversation. So it is amazing. Moving on. So when you think back to an organizational transformation or crisis, you just had a transformation, what culture dynamics helped or hindered resilience and alignment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, really over the past 4 to 5 years, it's felt like one crisis moment after the other, which is really exhausting for our people and exhausting for us as people
Yes.
leaders. And that's something that I think through sort of transformation and crisis that people within the organization often forget that we're people too.
Yes.
I like to mention that every once in a while, like I'm just human trying to do the work and trying to do the right things for you. But I think what becomes really clear, and I actually posted a thing on LinkedIn this morning about this, is that culture doesn't disappear in a crisis, it actually gets louder.
Yes.
So, I mean, if we talk about what we were just talking about, like that underlying current, that's where that underlying current or the unspoken culture comes out so loudly, is in these moments where there is crisis. So, it's like the things that have always been there. So it's really amplifying those pieces. So what's helped me in going through those, and we've been through so many of them, and I mean, like other organizations, especially in technology, we've had multiple reductions in force, and we've had 4 CEOs in 3 years. So, when I say we've been through transformation, we have been through transformation over and over and over again, and have managed to retain the majority of our team throughout all of that, because we had things like clear ownership and really honest communication, and maintained as much psychological safety as you possibly can in those moments. Because of course, I mean, if you have a reduction in force, every single person, their first reaction is, what's coming next? Am I next?
Yes.
And so, do I need to start looking for a new role? Am I safe in this organization? So, we really quickly tried to get back to that place by being very honest about everything that had happened and why.
I love it. Yeah.
And so, people understand their roles, and then they start to trust that leaders are telling them the truth. So even when you have those moments where, I mean, you're reciting some talking points that somebody has written for you, and you don't necessarily, fully, like, it's really difficult news to deliver, and you're like, and it comes out not feeling as authentic as you would like it to, because you've been so honest in your communication, and because you've created that psychological safety. They give you a little bit of grace in those moments to be like, okay, like, I get it. This is hard to deliver, and so. And make it safe for people to ask questions, make it safe for them to express their concerns. So say, like, I'm worried about my job. What does this mean for me? Those questions don't have to sit within them. They can actually express them without fear. And then you start to unlock that resilience in your people. So as you move through all of this change, then they start to understand, okay, well, this happens. Change happens in business. It's okay. They're going to tell me exactly why this is happening, and then I'm going to reset and realign. So then you're like, people actually start leaning into it rather than shutting down, and then you get the disengagement. And I think what's like really challenging in today's market is that people aren't leaving because it's almost like the devil is better than the devil you don't. And it's like this sense of security, but also they're not necessarily super engaged in your organization. So you have people are staying and you have these great retention rates, but then is it good retention? So that's a whole other. But I think the things that really make it very, very challenging for your team and for like the people team to go through these challenging moments is also like where you try to create false harmony, like, oh, everything's fine, and toxic positivity, and then there's this lack of clarity and like hidden messages and hidden power structures, and you see people where like everybody's in a meeting, everybody's nodding and going, oh, yes, yes, I agree. And then everybody walks out with these different interpretations, or they have this side conversations, and then, or they're waiting for, oh, well, I'm waiting for the real decision maker to actually express what is happening. And that kind of ambiguity becomes so toxic, and then it slows you down and it erodes trust, and that's like burnout starts to like leak into the organization for people, and that's a horrible place to be. And that, like, one really important thing that I've learned is that during a crisis moment, or when you're pivoting as an organization, people don't need perfection. So you don't have to spend every single waking moment on exactly the right messaging. But what you do need to provide them is that transparency and the consistency and like the meaning behind the decisions, and to stay super grounded in the values of the organization, while being honest about the hard stuff. And then your culture really becomes that stabilizer.
Beautifully said. It's amazing how everything that you're saying is just resonates so hard with me. I'll start off with the CEO. 4 CEOs in 3 to 4 years. That's amazing. That's almost, we talked about it. Leadership, the culture is brought by the leadership, and that's the CEO at the very top. However, when you're changing these 4 CEOs, that's like such a major impact on the stable part of the organizational culture, right? And each CEO will come with their own values and beliefs, and then they will try to change that to, or bring it into this organization. And only the stable part is what allows you to continue to have that structural DNA and maintain it. And I love the fact that you and your team was able to focus on the very important part, and that's psychological safety, and bringing that about through communication, clear and crystal clear communication, to ensure that teams know that these changes, it's all about lowering the learning anxiety, right? These changes happen. Changes are part of normal life. There's no way that we'll never have change. And that's the crucial part about ensuring and helping organizations to learn that there is a stable part, as well as around the stable part, we need to have the dynamic part that allows us to thrive in this complex and dynamic world. So we have to have both of them. Culture is stable as well as it's very dynamic. So there were so many beautiful points you mentioned. I couldn't keep track. I wish I could, but I would love to talk about all of them. But awesome stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, what you said about, every leader brings in new value. They do, because of course they're brought in for a reason. And I mean, every CEO change was for a very specific reason and for good for the organization, and it all makes sense. Very long story that again could do a whole podcast on that. But even if a leader says, "Oh, I'm not going to make any changes," it's inevitable because it's a different human. So, yes. And they have different values, and they also have a different mandate.
Yeah.
So, and your values and your culture really need to drive the performance of the organization in whatever direction you need to go at that particular time. So, I mean, we have had 4 different sets of values, and however, the underlying, like the foundation of our culture has never shifted.
Yeah. Fantastic. Awesome. That's really, and that, just going back to the value point, you have to live you have to live your values as daily behaviors. Otherwise it will erode and you will lose sight, and then it'll just become your espoused value. This is what we want to be. Are we there? Are we doing that? No, there's a huge gap. So cool. What's one assumption about culture that you believed in early in your career, but have since changed your mind about?
Yes. I mean, there's probably many things, but and I just posted about this also on LinkedIn the other day, but that I used to believe that HR owns culture. I was very convinced we know everything, well, not everything. We know, the most about culture. We know how to build it. This is our wheelhouse. And I mean, often you're told that too, that
Yeah.
people have the titles people in culture.
Yeah.
It's so I mean, the assumption is, well, then I should own it. And yeah, no. So the truth really is that that the CEO does always.
Yes.
Um, so culture is set by the CEO, shaped by the leaders, reinforced by people teams, and then lived by everyone. So it's that whole model. And um, if the CEO isn't modeling the values and the leadership team isn't aligned to them, no amount of HR programming will stick because I've tried.
Yep.
And it is impossible to be successful. So it needs to be owned by the CEO and really valued as this is actually a strategic differentiator.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. But what we can do is have a huge influence.
Yes.
So, as I said before, we're in the spot, the position to really spot the disconnects between what we say we value and what's actually being displayed or rewarded, and we can design all of the systems that reinforce the right behaviors.
Yep.
And build the language, as we talked about, and rituals that really make the culture come to life. And then also, create accountabilities when some of those norms start to go off track. So there's lots that we can do there. But really, like I talk about, culture, like we build the scaffolding, or, we're the stewards of it, but we're not the owners.
Yep.
And like, as soon as I stopped trying to own it and then focused on enabling it through, like, the leadership alignment and systems design and communication and all of the things that we've already talked about, that my impact was phenomenal. And before, it was just frustrating. It was basically banging my head against the wall. Please live the culture, please. and no, so yeah.
You're 100% spot on. That's something which I face all the time when I speak to prospective clients, and they're always thinking about, some of them actually go out and start hiring people or human resource people to start to say, oh, I spoke to, I think I need to build my culture because I'm convinced that the culture is important based on conversation with Gaurav from Ezini. But guess what? I'm not necessarily going to go with them. I'm going to hire my own human resource person who's going to help me with the culture or build the culture. And I'm like, human resources. And I remember we had this conversation on your LinkedIn post. I mentioned the fact that human resources, yes, they can help, but they are not the ones who will build your culture.
Mm.
Human resources have their own subculture. Engineering has their own subculture, sales own subculture. So depending on the kind of organization or the leadership that you have, that's the predominant culture that you will see, and that's what's going to thrive. And if you try to bend it to shape it in terms of ways of human resources, you're not going to succeed. You're going to find it very frustrating. But at the same time, like you mentioned, the buck starts with the leader, and then everyone lives it and reinforces it and holds each other accountable. That's one major part that you have to have in your organization, holding that safety to hold each other accountable and themselves accountable. That this is what the right thing to do is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Awesome conversation. This is interesting. I've written an article on this, but in a world of remote work, generational shifts and AI, what aspects of organizational culture do you think will become even more critical in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I love this question. So I would say, as we all know, we're in a moment where everything is shifting.
Yeah.
How we work, where we work, even who is doing the work when we throw AI into the mix.
Yeah.
And I think the truth is that we don't actually fully know what's coming because everything is changing so quickly and so much faster than we ever anticipated that it would. Because
Yeah.
we're like, oh, AI, it's coming. No, it's here. And then like every day is like, oh my goodness, it's more advanced and more advanced, faster than we could ever imagine. I think like, what I do know is that in a world of remote work and generational change and these increasingly intelligent tools, that human connection becomes the differentiator.
Yes.
So, cultures that will thrive are really the ones that protect that space for real conversations and the coaching moments and, really reflecting and again, like dissent. So there's always like the controversial conversations that you have between people to really get to the root of a problem and creativity. And something that I've really been thinking about a lot lately is actually the ability to think for yourself and to create something original and like the emotional intelligence that it takes to maneuver through complex situations. Because sure, you can ask chat GPT, how do I function, how do I fix this complex situation in my organization, and get a really clearly laid out plan. But then you throw humans into the mix and it's nuanced and the conversation doesn't go the way that AI told you it was going to go because every single person is different and they bring something different. So I really think that in time, that's what's going to become the real currency is like, I created something myself. And people are going to go, wow, that's really beautiful. So it's like this shift back to like creativity matters. Eventually, not yet. We're not there yet. But I mean, anyone can get an answer out of AI, but like, can anyone think for themselves? So like, my way of not becoming almost a slave to chat GPT is like, I don't want to outsource my thinking.
Yes.
And so I use it to pressure test my ideas. So I draft my ideas or any say internal comms for my team. I'll do like a draft, here are all of my ideas. This is what I'm thinking about it. And then I'll ask, things like, where are the flaws in my reasoning? If I roll this out as is, where could things go wrong? What am I missing? And then, then I get back a little bit of, oh, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And I was actually, I'm doing some coaching, I'm not doing coaching, I'm being coached on sort of the mental, it's a mental health gym by Corey Chadwick. It's amazing to really, and what we're working on right now is crafting our why. And so I got to a place where I'm like, yes, I think this is it. And then I asked ChatGPT to be my personal coach. And I said, like, what from this am I not thinking about that's not coming top of mind? And the first question it asked, and I actually started crying, was, what are the things, and in it like oh my goodness, you see me, which is kind of creepy, but it was, what are the things that break your heart in organizations every day? And I was like,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but that's not something that I would have ever, when I was crafting my why, have thought about on my own. So it's just like that, those challenge questions.
Yeah.
So that's what, like, it's writing first. It's really coming up with the ideas, using my own human judgment, but then having it amplified, not
Yes.
replaced. So like that human and AI working as a team.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm gonna pick up the latest or the recent conversation about what breaks your heart, and I'm with you. It's, for me, it is just the fact that we are so relational in our relationships that we are humans. We need to be humans. We can't put on masks when we come into your office. We have to be. This is Gaurav. This is who he is. This is what entire baggage of life is he comes in with that. This is me, right?
Yeah.
It reminds me of that movie. I don't know if you've seen stuff. So Cody's me, bro. When are you gonna let me be me? And then the other thing that you were mentioning about the creativity being the new currency, so powerful, so very powerful. It reminded me again of a movie, Castaway. Tom Hanks, when he creates fire, because fire, like what? It's not in life, but he's still look what I have created. I have created fire. So it was fantastic. It just reminded me of that. For sure, AI is here. It's moving so fast. And I've written exactly an article about this fact that we are not in a position to use AI the best because AI is moving too fast. And we, as ourselves, as humans, are not capable or not in the position to utilize it to the best of our, or the best that it can offer, the value that it can offer. However, at the same time, like you said, even I use AI just exactly like this. I'll write down my own draft, my own thoughts, and then ask it to, I use it in a little differently. I'll be like, please refine it for me. Give me better forwards. Exactly. I'm going to start using your question about, hey, what am I missing in this and stuff. So, because you know how AI is, it's very biased and it'll probably say, yeah, what a wonderful thought. You created such amazing conversation. Yes, it's going to be an amazing article. No, please tell me what have I missed and what is it, and remove some of these kind of biases from it. So,
yeah. Is there a different perspective I'm not thinking about?
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is, it's the human moments. And like, I think that the magic that comes from a fantastic one-on-one,
Yeah,
or like clarity from a really difficult conversation. And like, there's this certain energy between people that, like, when you've been seen and heard, and like, those cannot be automated.
yeah,
So, sure, of course, like, AI is making tasks a lot easier. I can accomplish, in a day what I could accomplish in a week. So
exactly.
that's great. But then also I think about, like, what is the actual burden that that's putting on me? Because I'm expected to accomplish a week's work in a day.
Ooh,
And
that's
so
very,
there's a lot of weight there of, like, oh my goodness, how many times am I context switching, and like, having to just as like such a load of work. And then you're just like flipping through so quickly that, do I even remember? Am I putting enough thought into the work that I'm doing? So it was like, forcing yourself to take a step back and slow down a little bit.
yes. Exactly. That's a very crucial point that you make. And because that's exactly what I think about AI, is the fact that I celebrate that AI exists today. And I'm celebrating the fact that, because I think about it from humans' perspective, right? We have to humanize the world, the workplace and everything else within it. We have to humanize it. The person in front of you is a human, not a role or a skill or something. Where did we come? How did we get here? It was because of the industrial era, where we didn't have the technology. We just didn't want, it was cheaper to put humans to do 5 steps. That's it. You're going to do these 5 steps. You're not going to think about anything. You're just going to do them, these mundane tasks. I often say this in my conversation. I do a lot of networking. I talk about a lot of leaders, and the fact that where do we feel best is in our creative world, in when we do creative things. If you're going to ask me to do mundane things, I'm going to get disconnected from the work. So AI is awesome because I can have it automate. And in fact, you as a leader should create an environment where, as soon as your people see something that can be automated, they should raise their hand and say, please automate this so I can slow down, step back, and really think. I had this conversation with this customer. They were upset. Why were they upset? I'm taking time to really understand the human from the other side who I provide service to. So that is the most crucial part. That's where we shine as humans, the creative part. We need to get there. And we need to create these kind of environments where people are not afraid to say, hey, automate this because I want to think about the customer more.
Yes.
And not be afraid that I want to be all busy looking. I'm always busy, and not,
Yeah.
who am I fooling? We're not generating any value like this. So
Yeah. And that they're not automating themselves out of a job.
exactly. We should ensure that they don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
That you're automating the tasks that you don't enjoy doing anyway on a regular basis. So automate those so that you can free up your mind to actually think and then
Exactly.
do even more strategic work or more creative.
Fantastic. There's more I had about generational change as well. Like you said, it's like they're humans. We just have to treat them as humans. We have to make sure that we understand. This is something that many leaders have heard or followers, to the fact that yes, there are so many generations, but try to understand common on a culture basis, on their generational subculture values, and live by them, and of course be adaptable. That's the most important thing, to have the agility to adapt and compromise and have conflict resolution training within you. And that's one of the focuses that I do as well. Once you have those, you will be able to create much more better workplaces for sure. Critical thinking was another part, which this is another story I'll share with you just quickly, and then we'll try to wrap up. I had this conversation with the leadership of a company, software development company in Argentina. They were out here at an event in Atlanta, and they talked about how AI is being used by the senior tenured, and how it's different for the medium and the junior tenured engineers, and the fact that juniors are using the AI and creating code which is not really production ready. It has a lot of flaws, and they don't know what AI created, so they're losing. The main part is that they don't have any critical thinking skills, which will allow them to make changes. So which is where I mentioned to the leader that, hey, why don't you just ensure that they know that they're not expected to create results right away. They're expected to improve critical thinking of theirs, train them in that critical thinking aspects of it, and let them not necessarily play, but work with AI to learn, and have your senior people teach AI so that AI can teach the junior folks. So it creates a consistency across the board, and just ensures that everyone knows that they're being valued, and they're not necessarily that the juniors are supposed to create some value right away.
Yeah. Or like have the experience of building the code first. So like what I do, I write my thing first and whatever it is, my employee comms first. And then I use AI as like question, like to really just, what is my, where are my words to analyze my thinking on it. So write the code first and then use AI to say like, where are there any flaws in my code?
Yes, exactly. And fantastic.
Have AI teach you.
Yep. Awesome. Let's move on to our rapid fire questions. I'm sure you and I can go on and talk a lot, so it's one of our favorite topics. I'm sure it's yours as well. So, but what book do you recommend the most?
So first, shameless plug, the one that my daughter is currently writing. It doesn't have a title yet, but when it comes out, I'll let you know. She
Awesome.
can't actually write it fast enough for me, because I'm like, could you write the next chapter? I want to read this. But really, the book that I actually recommend the most for leadership teams, especially leadership teams that have a lot of the loudest voices in the room, which many do, is Quiet by Susan Cain. So, completely reshaped how I think about leadership and dynamics and workplace design, even, like really to see that some of the strongest leaders aren't the loudest in the room, and that really great ideas can actually just die on the cutting floor because nobody's listening to the person, or the person is is introverted, so they're not necessarily going to be the one that speaks out in a meeting. But like, introverts are often the people who are asking the right questions, and they create space for other people, and then they really move with intention, and they're doing a lot of thinking and listening. And that's like such a critical skill is to be able to listen. So I think that that's a must read for anybody that like really wants to build an inclusive, high performing team, is to pay attention to the quiet people in the room.
Exactly. And guess what? I mean, I help organizations do agile methodologies and adopt agile methodologies as well. And my recent client I work with, I made sure this is what I had to say for everyone in the team. I want to hear everybody talk and share their views about it, because everyone's voice is valuable. We care about it. And if I find myself in a room, people aren't talking, I will be make sure it's not about trying to make other people uncomfortable, which is I clearly state that. I want to hear what you're saying, Akansha. What is it that you wanted to share, or what do you think is going on in your head that might be valuable for us in this conversation? So I always try to bring that, because it's like you said, it's really important to listen to almost every voice. And I say almost because not necessarily everybody has something to add right away, but it's if they have, I want to hear it, because different perspectives is going to allow us to solve these complex problems without just one person thinking about all the solving whatever. So it's not going to be possible for us to achieve.
Absolutely. And so I take that one step further, and because sometimes the quiet people are really just they're afraid to speak up in a meeting. And it doesn't mean obviously that they don't have great ideas, but sometimes they just won't share it in the meeting. So those are the people that I always follow up with after the meeting.
Oh, very nice.
I could see by the look on your face you had something to share.
Yeah.
Do you want to send me your thoughts by email?
Yeah.
And
I love that.
the things that you get back it's incredible, the thoughts.
That's a great tip for my audience. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Awesome. And I looked onto my site is because I was looking for my book. This is my book section over here. So I think you mentioned quiet. I think, is it the quiet leadership or is just quiet?
Just quiet.
Okay. I have the quiet leadership. I still have to finish reading it, but cool. What's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Maybe that I am one of the quiet people. So I'm absolutely an introvert, but I thrive in those high stakes leadership roles, which is, I think in the past people would have thought of it as like that doesn't work together, but it actually does. As I love speaking, I love leading transformation, I love driving change, and especially in the culture space, but it is where I recharge. So I do get a lot of energy from people, but they also drain my energy. So I do need to recharge, and I do that in quiet. Often with a notebook. I like to write a lot, and so I'll do that in a notebook. So like while I'll go to networking events, I'll host networking events. I love them. They do take my energy down to a level where I need to do that quiet time by myself. But most people actually have the assumption that I'm extroverted because I'm outspoken about the work. But really, the best thinking that I do is happening behind the scenes in those quiet moments with me and a pen and a notebook.
Awesome. I love it. I share exactly the same thought process, Cerys. I'm like this exactly. I used to think, although I recently turned an entrepreneur and I have to do networking to raise awareness and to find clients and hunt, I used to think like the same way. I would love to talk when I'm comfortable, when I can really want to make changes across. And but then now, of course, now it's a situation is every networking event, I'm shameless. I just go and say hello and talk, and it does drain you. All of this conscious thinking it's a reserve. It's not an unlimited resource that we have. You have to recharge. You have to generate it. Now I'm going a little bit spiritual in my thoughts, and it's like you have to sit quietly and regenerate your prana, is what it's called in the Hindu spiritual world. Awesome. How can our listeners connect with you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search Cerys Cook. There's not many of us in the world, so I'll pop up with my picture. But I regularly post about leadership and culture and building more human workplaces. So would love to connect with anybody who's doing sort of this bold work in the people or transformation space. And then you can also follow along with Rise Consulting, which is my advisory practice. I also help founders and executive leaders really build their cultures with clarity and intention. I finally, after years, have started building out my website and my LinkedIn profile. So more to come on that in the very near future.
That's important stuff, and it takes time to do that, and it's an iterative process. Doesn't happen overnight. So
yes, I am
great.
noticing. I'm like, it'll take me 5 minutes to build a website. I know what I'm. No.
Exactly. Well, Cerys, it was an absolute honor. Thank you for joining me as my guest on the Culture8 podcast. I appreciate your wisdom, your insights, and your conversation. It was fantastic. I love the back and forth between you and I. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.
Appreciate it. And there you have it, folks. A great episode. And thank you.